Hey, it's your boy Easy, and on today's episode of Easy Opens, we're going to be taking a look at the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive 2017 Neca Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles box set based on the 1987 animated series Leonardo figure. Let's go ahead and get this figure free from its really awesome plastic prison, take a look and see what we think about Leonardo. So here's the figure, fresh out the box with all of the accessories. Now, I might need to explain this a little bit. This box set comes with a ton of accessories and interchangeable hands, especially for the turtles. So the way I broke the accessories up was based on proximity to each individual turtle. So outside of their signature weapons, whichever hands and accessories were closest to them are the ones that they will be reviewed with. So let's go ahead and get into that. Now, Leonardo comes with his signature katana or ninjato blades, whichever you prefer to call them, and these are fantastic. I am really pleased with these, and I wasn't thinking that I would be as pleased with them as what I am. I guess because after getting the SH Figuarts version, where the blades are a lot thinner and more not realistic, but more, they're just thinner and look a little flimsy. These are bulkier and they look like they have some weight to them, and they just look more impressive, if you will. Then moving on to some other accessories that he comes with interchangeable open palmed hands. Now, these are really good for if he's like expecting money, or if he's wanting, a high three, or like if he's trying to like explain or give directions on how to get to the turtle lair and getting frustrated. There's a lot of practical uses you can get out of this open palmed hand. And now probably goes without saying that all of these hands and all the other ones that are included in this set are interchangeable with the rest of the turtles, because they all share a similar tone of green that makes it easier to switch these out and get a lot of use out of them. Now, the other accessory that he comes with is probably one of my favorite accessories out of this entire set. It is the turtle comm, more specifically the open turtle comm. This thing is so detailed. Neca did not skip any kind of any beat on any of this. It is meticulously detailed. Not just the front and the sides, but also the back. You get a screen and all kinds of buttons and just all kinds of accoutrement, if you will, that just really makes this stand out. They could have easily gone super cheap with this, but you can almost get the sense that Neca really does care about their Ninja Turtles exclusives that they've been putting out the last few years. And if anything, it's evident here in just this little accessory on the turtle comm. So I am super excited about this, and it is really neat. This figure is based on the 1987 animated series look, but more specifically, and in my opinion, based on the intro to that series, as well as season 1 of that series. Now, if you're not too familiar with the 1987 animated series, it started off a little bit more serious, not really dark and gritty, but there was an edge to it that made it seem a little bit more legitimate and less of a caricature of itself, which is what it soon became in subsequent seasons. And now, I can't speak for everybody, but for me personally, I absolutely love the intro and season 1 look of the Turtles from the 87 series. The just everything about them, and it could be that it's because that's my first interaction, the first cut is the deepest kind of thing, and that's how I was introduced to them, and it kind of gave you that impression that this is a cartoon, but there's substance here. And unfortunately, that didn't last too terribly long, but the initial reaction and feeling of that permeated into my fandom of the Turtles, and it is very accurately represented here in this action figure. Now, moving on to the sculpt, these sculpts on these turtles are reuses of the exclusive set that Neca put out, I believe last year, of the turtles in their arcade appearance from the Turtles arcade back in the day. And I don't actually own that set, but from everything I've heard, everyone loved it, and it was a great set to get. But these are the exact same molds, and these are fantastic. Like they just look so great. Now they stand about 5.5 inches tall, which is fantastic because the Turtles should be slightly shorter than figures that would also be in the 6-inch scale or the 1/12 scale, if you will. And we'll take a look at that in a second, how they compare. But yeah, these sculpts are like fantastic. The detail on the front shell and the back shell are great. It's not overly done. It's very simplistic, but also very like defined and like almost like a definitive version of these figures without being too stylized. And I love that. I can't get enough of the way these figures look. But as I mentioned, these figures are 5.5 inches tall, and I think that they will scale very well with some other figures that you might have in your collection. So let's go ahead and take a look at how they measure up. So here's Leonardo with the Neca black and white Mirage version of Leonardo, and the knockoff Neca Mirage version with the colored bandana Leonardo. Here he is next to the Playmates Classics version of Leonardo from the same animated series. Here he is with the SH Figuarts version of Leonardo from the same animated series. And here he is with the Legacy White Power Ranger and Pink Space Ranger from Bandai. Here he is next to the SH Figuarts Chun-Li figure and Figma Gilgamesh figure. Here he is next to the Marvel Select Juggernaut and Masters of the Universe Classics Hordak figure. Here he is next to Marvel Legends Colossus and Pizza Spider-Man. And here he is with Playmates Classics Bebop and Rocksteady. Now, the paint on these figures, I think, are great. Like they're a nice skin tone. Like everything is pretty spot on as far as the color choices. Now, I know that a lot of people had some gripes about the not discoloration, but like the darker shades on the back half of the figure. It's mostly on the bandanas and armbands and stuff, but you can see it on the back of the legs, the neck and shoulders, and the head. But like it's very like minor on the back of the figure, but like it's more prevalent on the bandana and armbands. This doesn't bother me. I get how some people would have a problem with it, but it really doesn't bother me the way that I feel like some people were saying it bothered them. That's cool, you know, to each their own. But other than that, I have no gripes outside of some minor manufacturing things. Like there are a couple of white specks here and there, and some paint, got on from the belt buckle, got onto the belt a little bit. But you know, those are bound to happen. So overall, you know, I can't really complain about that. And most importantly, though, Leonardo's eyes mine are not very derpy, if at all. So that's always a good sign. So yeah. Alright, so let's take a look at the articulation on Leonardo. So let's start with his head. So his head is on a ball joint, and it allows for 360 rotation at the neck. He can look up this far and down this far. Now, his head is also on a separate piece, which is, well, the neck, I should say, is on a separate piece. It's not just solid, like just one piece stuck in there. It allows for a little bit extra movement, wiggle room, if you will, and it's one of those things you don't realize you need or can use until you have it in hand, and then it all makes sense. But it is kind of neat that it's there. Now, moving on to his arms. His arms are, his shoulders are on a ball joint,
that allows for 360 degrees rotation, as well as, up and down movement. His arms can go up about this high, and he has a bicep swivel that gives him 360 degrees rotation. Same at the elbow as well, and he also has a single jointed elbow bend right there. So then the wrists are a little tricky, because these particular wrists have an up and down articulation, but due to I think his use of the swords, it just helps for him to hold them a little better, and that's really neat. But being that they are removable hands, it's a little tricky getting it to work quite right, but nevertheless it's still there and better than not having it. Now moving on to his legs, Leonardo can kick up this far, or well, I should say out this far. He can kick forward this far, and he has a hard time kicking back due to the shell, but he does have double jointed knees, and he has an ankle pivot as well, and he has a thigh swivel, which is really cool. Now lastly, he has a piece of articulation that is kind of hidden in his shell. I don't know if you can see it very well in this shot, but it's basically kind of like a waist swivel and an ab crunch, kind of sorta in one, but it gives him, like, again, literal wiggle room. So one of those things that you don't know you need until you've got it, and then in hand, and it makes perfect sense. But it does help to get him in a little bit more dynamic poses, and it's really a neat added feature, because they could have just made the whole body like a solid piece, but they went a little bit extra, and I'm really glad they did, because it's a really neat feature. So there you go. There is the articulation for Leonardo.
Alright, so I am so glad that these figures finally came out. Like, I remember when Neca just, dropped it on everybody, and it was, like, amazing. Like, they looked so good, and I'm so glad to finally have them in hand. These figures have a weight to them that is, it's not quite the same weight as the SH Figuarts figures, but there's still a bulkiness to them that make them feel, like, legit and worthwhile, if you will. And I just, everything from the bulkiness of them to the aesthetic, like the look and the paint and just the sculpt and everything, it just feels as if they climbed right off the screen and onto my shelf. And that's exactly what I was looking for. Right when I thought that I didn't need any other turtles for my collection, especially in the 1/12 or 6-inch scale, Neca drops these, and I am so glad that they did, because I'm so glad to have them in my collection, and they are at least for Leonardo. We'll get to the other turtles in a little bit, but Leonardo right here is fantastic. So I think that if you haven't gotten to pick these up yet, that you should, and if you can't afford them, if past releases from Neca, especially in their Turtles line, have proven to be, have proven anything, it's that the knockoff versions are actually pretty good and worth your money if you can't afford to get the legitimate copies of these figures. So either way, I highly recommend picking up this figure if you're a fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but especially if you love the intro and the season 1 looks of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, alright, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks for watching it. If you liked what you saw, hit that like button. And if you want to see more from me, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. And hey, if you want to hear more from me for some reason, and especially if you want to hear more of me talking about the Ninja Turtles, then be sure to check out my podcast, Turtle Soup, where a friend and I talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles every other week. And then I also have another podcast called Daydream Nation, where a friend and I talk about records every week. So that's going to do it for me today. Again, thanks so much for watching, and be sure to check back here often for more opening goodness right here on Easy Opens. Else time.